Welcome back to the Rebuilt Parish Podcast. On today's episode, we've brought back Father John Sullivan from Holy Redeemer in Chatham, Massachusetts. We are talking today about reaching your target audience. And you may have heard us talk about Timonium Tim before. Well, today you get to hear from Father John all about Chatham Chuck and how he tailors everything he does at Holy Redeemer around Chatham Chuck. We'll see you inside the episode. Well, hi there, Father John. Thanks for joining us on the podcast again.
Good afternoon. Happy to be with you, Melissa.
Well, Father John, I'm excited that we're having this conversation today. And here's the thing that I want us to make sure we're letting people know from the beginning. We're talking about Timonium Tim, which is Nativity's character, or as we call in the marketing world, idea customer avatar. And you get to tell us about yours. But first, can you tell us a little bit about your parish?
Sure. I'm pastor at Holy Redeemer Church in Chatham, Massachusetts. It's at the elbow of Cape Cod. So it's we say small parish, but I guess it's really an average size parish. We've got about 500 to 600 families in a mostly resort parish. In the summertime, we have 2 chapels and our population expands tremendously. In the wintertime, it's mostly a retirement community. So with half of our parishioners who are permanent down in Florida. So it's kind of a quiet winter place, but it's a place that I've been here for 8 years now. But it's a place that has a very different clientele, so to speak, or parishioner. And so it's a fun place to try to implement our version of Timonium Tim, Chatham Chuck.
I think that's what's so fun is that your demographic kind of changes a little bit throughout the year as the seasons change.
Right. So there's not many children in the winter, but there's quite a few here. It's a family. Chatham is a family resort, so it's nice to have a big, we were kind of reverse seasons for most parishes. Summer's our active time.
For sure. Now, for listeners who maybe aren't familiar with Timonium Tim or maybe don't remember who he is, can you briefly explain what our Timonium Tim concept is and how you adapted it for your parish and created Chatham Chuck?
Great. Sure. Timonium Tim in Nativity is the average person that is unchurched, that the parish wants to reach out to the person who was maybe a little bit indifferent or has never been exposed to a faith, and trying to remember that, the church isn't, as I like to say, a clubhouse for Catholics, but a parish is actually got a mission basis, and that we're always trying to focus on mission. Here at Chatham, I have a little bit of a different take on it, because when I first came here, Chatham Chuck was not somebody who was outside the church so much as somebody who was inside the church. The parish had been sort of a minimalist philosophy. And so when I came here, there were a lot of people in the pews who needed conversion. And I kind of think that, you can't go and try to grow wider until you grow deeper. And so I really characterize Chatham Chuck as the person who was already sitting in the pew, but he wants to get out of there in 20 minutes and have it checked off rather than really have a spiritual weekly dose of faith. So I kind of had that person in mind rather than so much somebody who wasn't churched at all, because I really felt that to reach out to the unchurched, you have to be somebody who was a person of faith. And so we really had to build up discipleship here in the parish first. So that's what I was sort of aiming for when I coined Chatham Chuck.
I think that makes so much sense. And every parish is going to be different. And Father John, the way you've shared that, it's giving hope to other parishes who maybe they're not sure where to start. And a lot of times starting on the inside and giving the people in the pews a conversion is going to help you to grow wider.
Right. As I say, I like to tell people, we're not a clubhouse for Catholics.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when your team began clarifying your own Timonium Tim, or Chatham Chuck, as you call him, what did the process look like? So how did you move from maybe some general assumptions to a clear, specific picture of that person that you're trying to reach?
Well, I didn't really have a team at the time, because when I was first got in the parish here, so it was mostly people who, were sort of my deacon and a few other people that, was trying to get a handle on the community. And of course, when I first got here, I got some people expressing opinions or writing letters that said, well, this is what I got. This is the person who I'm going to talk to. This is the person, well, I got to aim for, I guess. Some of their, misconceptions about what parish life was all about. So that's more how I formulated it rather than, having a sit down brainstorming session. So it was more of a just getting a handle and getting a feel for the parish naturally, as in interaction with people. That sort of helped me to formulate this person who I want to, I want to focus on.
That's so interesting. Father John, I can tell you from having worked in the parish too, and I know you've had this, and I think so many of our listeners, this is going to resonate with, where we've all gotten those letters, right? Where people are unhappy with changes we're making or unhappy with just any change or movement happening in the parish. So thank you for sharing that, because I think our listeners need to hear that has happening everywhere. It's not just them, and they're not doing a terrible job.
As Father Michael says, when you get a card from a parishioner, it's good. When you get the number 10 white envelope with no return address, then you're in for trouble. So
For sure.
you fortify yourself and say, here goes.
Definitely. Now, Father John, let's talk about how having a defined Chatham Chuck in your parish changed the way you make decisions, because now with your leadership team, and now you've got one, right?
Right. Yeah. So, it's when I first started, this was, a number of years ago now, I preached during Lent the Catholic Atheist series. I was just, I didn't have a series of my own. So I used that Lent and, used some of the feedback that people were giving me about, that Catholic atheist that's in the pew. And that's really where I sort of formulated my approach and just that mindset of people who, to say, deepening their faith. How do I deepen the person's faith that's already in the pew so they can be an evangelizer and a faithful disciple that reaches out. So just coming up with that help to, in any way I can, to explain to them what a real disciple, what a real is supposed to be doing, what a real Christian is, and what a real Catholic is supposed to be doing. So that's sort of what I based my approach on.
Our 2025 Rebuilt Conference was beyond all that we could ask or imagine. There were over 700 attendees from around the globe who came together to be inspired, encouraged, and equipped. This conference was created for parish leaders and diocese teams who are ready to transform and renew their communities. Did you join us? Did you learn new ideas, ways to strengthen your mission? Are you ready to join again or for the first time? Save the date. May 2nd through May 4th, 2027, the Rebuilt Conference is returning to Timonium, Maryland. This gathering is more than a conference. It is an opportunity to come together with pastors and parish leaders from around the world who are committed to building healthy, growing, mission-driven parishes. For now, save the date, May 2nd to May 4th, 2027, at Church of the Nativity in Timonium, Maryland. Details and registration will be coming in months ahead, so stay tuned. We cannot wait to welcome you.
I love that you shared that Catholic Atheist was the message series that you chose. So for our listeners who maybe aren't sure, well, what is he talking about? Catholic Atheist, what is that? So we've got content. Do you want to share how you found that?
Sure. Well, I of course, it was in a previous parish where I started, read and rebuilt the book and started using some of the message series. So I had used it in the previous parish just because I thought it was a very good topic to touch on with people and to help them realize that, hey, I was confirmed, but I haven't really read anything other than frantic prayer in a time of crisis. I really haven't practiced my faith. So it just brought up that approach that, hey, I've got to look at my faith and say, am I really acting as a Christian, following the gospel message? So it was very helpful.
That's great. We've got a parish in our small groups course right now who that's the message series that they're doing for Lent too. And they're seeing a great response from it as well. And for those who aren't familiar, if you are not a content member or not a coaching parish, if you check out our website, I will put the link in the show notes. You can join and become a content member, and you can also do Catholic Atheist. It's worth it for during Lent, right, Father John?
Yeah, very good. It was a very good series. And as I said, I've done it twice in two different parishes. I I really appreciate the series. And, I think it's maybe something I could do again.
Yeah. I think every few
People
years,
that heard it the
everybody
first
probably
time,
needs that one.
yeah.
So good. Now, when you talk about Chatham Chuck, can you describe what are maybe some of his characteristics? How do you define him?
Well, of course, he's probably a bit of an older man. Okay. Oh, what? And somebody who, probably was pretty much a professional most of his life, maybe even a business, successful in business. So they kind of think that they have accomplished something in life and that what they've done is important. But of course, they've neglected the most important thing, their spirituality. So somebody who might come for Christmas and Easter, and probably maybe have a very good impression, but still has still hasn't had the nut cracked yet, so to speak. And so that's one of the things that I have to remember too. That this maybe somebody out there every week, especially at Christmas and Easter and the major holidays, and of course, really make my message and my presentation of church top notch and something that is rewarding. It's always going to be discouraging because it takes years sometimes. So this person coming back and telling you, Father, you did a great job. And then, well, where are you next Sunday? I do this every week. So the best thing is to remember is to know that you've got to be persistent with your target audience, and to always be listening to see what if they do come back from meet you after Easter or the day after Easter and stop their truck in the middle of the intersection and say, Father, you had this beautiful Mass Sunday, but to say just to keep plugging, to keep knowing that it's not going to happen overnight. It happens in God's good time. So that's really the big characteristic, especially in this community, because it's it's a wealthier retirement community. So that's sort of the person who society says you've accomplished something. You have this beautiful life because you have this beautiful home and seaside community. But to help them to remember, no, there's still a lot more life in them and a lot more purpose in life that they have to reflect upon.
So you said that this takes persistence, and that's something that I think our parish leaders out there need to hear, because they might do a message series and it's resonating with people, but then maybe they're not all coming back. But it's one of those things where we have to continue to pour in, that it's not all going to happen overnight. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, after 30 years of priesthood, you find that out, and and then you reflect on Scripture. And Jesus said, "Well, not everybody who followed Jesus or came to hear him speak followed him. I should say, followed him to the cross."
Right. And then one of the other things that you had said, because you know your target audience so well, you know what they're thinking, kind of what experiences they've had, because you're now tailoring your message to this target audience. I think about what kind of an impact that's going to have then when their kids and grandkids come into town. If they have come back to church themselves, you can tell me if I'm wrong, you're probably going to see more of the extended family when they come into town to visit.
Sure. There are good examples of that. Exactly, Melissa. You see somebody who I had recently a man who was Lutheran. He came to me a couple of years ago, and I want to become a Catholic. His wife, and just seeing her, she wasn't a churchgoer consistently before he came. I had never seen her, but she was a Catholic. But she came, and she, finally, she little bit by little bit, you could see how she was coming back to the faith, and she came back to the faith, and found out it was important. And his son was married here, and he living down in Washington, but he wanted to get married here. It's Holy Redeemer, and he had a good experience. And they even the sacrament evangelized the whole family too.
That is incredible. And this is what I think is so powerful about what you're doing. You know that target demographic so well. You're working on them and they're evangelizing the whole family. This is what an incredible way to put this time to work. I love that. Now, you talked about how you use the message series to tailor that towards Chatham Chuck. How was Chatham Chuck influencing your weekend experience in other ways, especially when it comes to, hospitality and communication as well?
Um, One of the things I like to do is, because I have so many diverse people, even a weekend in January, the February school vacation was back in the middle of February, and there was about at least half a dozen people in church over the week, families that I didn't recognize. I thought, well, they're here and some people even came up after Mass and said, I'm here for the weekend, Father. So, having that, mindset that to really make a good introduction. I always introduce myself at the beginning of Mass. If, I go on my vacation, you go to a place and you say, I wonder which priest is this, or who's that? And just to say, if you're going to lead the community and you don't tell them who you are, and so I always introduce myself and the deacon who's usually with me at Mass, and then, go up and down the aisles, just saying hello to people too. And I think that really draws people into the celebration, and the fact that, we have so many visitors every weekend, that they feel part of the community. So and everybody gets to feeling part of a community right away. And I think that opens their heart a little bit more to the message that you're delivering and the way you're trying to deliver that message.
Definitely. Now, Father John, there's parishes who struggle trying to be everything to everyone. So how has focusing on Chatham Chuck helped you stay aligned and avoid that mission drift?
Well, yeah. It makes you recognize that you've got to have a celebration of Mass that's focusing on the person who's not the insider. We can always fall to trying to focus on the usual suspects, the people that are there for every celebration you have, and they're very devoted parishioners, and they're very much appreciated. To make sure that you are aiming for the person who comes through the door and doesn't know what's going on, does just feeling this out, and do I belong here? Or could I find a place here in this parish? And so it's always nice when somebody comes up after a Mass and says that they're visiting, and they're telling you, well, you made me feel part of your community. I took the risk to come up to the priest and say, I'm visiting, and I really appreciate this. So it's you really, that's really when you get the feedback that you've been successful, and that you're, as you say, they might not necessarily, they're obviously a person of faith to begin with, but just that your community is reaching out, and that hopefully they're taking back to their own home parish a good feeling that they received in your parish.
Easter changes everything, but the question for your parish is simple. Will inspiration turn into action? Our new 5-week Easter message series, Go, is designed to help you move your people from spectator to servant. Beginning on Easter Sunday, this series walks your parish through a clear invitation. Do good. Be sent. Step forward. Serve. Grow. Grounded in Scripture and built specifically for the Easter season in Year A, Go helps parishioners see that serving is not filling a role. It is living the resurrection. You'll receive 5 fully written, completely customizable homilies, plus coordinated small group discussion guides, so your entire parish moves in one direction. If you're ready to turn Easter momentum into volunteer engagement, it's time to go. Visit rebuiltparish.com/Easter to access the series today. Now, how does having Chatham Chuck shape the way you talk about evangelization with your parishioners? Does this make an invitation more practical or relatable to them?
Yes. Yeah. I think that they can see the possibility, well, my husband or my wife or my daughter or, grandchild, whatever it is, fits that bill. And this, and just give them, that the approach that they can use, just rather than, trying to, guilt them into coming back to church, just saying that, they've had a good experience, and that they've heard other people. They talk to somebody who was, behind them in the pew or beside them in the pew. The person says that, they're impressed with what's going on in your parish. And then you can take that home, and the person maybe at your neighbor or your friend or whoever it is, you can share that positive experience. And, not try to, as I say, not try to guilt them into coming to church, but to help tell them that they're going to have a good experience, that they're going to have an uplifting experience.
What a simple way to evangelize, just sharing what a great experience it was.
Right, yeah.
What a great strategy. Now, you've been there a little over 8 years. So over that time, how have you refined or adjusted your understanding of Chatham Chuck?
Well, maybe one of the best things is being more understanding. As you say, when you first get here and, your first weekend and people try to, what are you doing? And that sort of thing, or make life rough for you can, you can obviously get very defensive. So, one of the things is to learn not to be defensive and to realize that, you're not going to please everybody, and, that's not your job. Your job is to be faithful. Why, Mother Teresa's job, God doesn't ask me to be successful. He asked me to be faithful. And, I think that's sort of the mindset that, refined. The fact that, after prayer and, success with what you're doing, to know that the strategy that you've come up with is working. And, yes, you refined a little bit, but to stick with your commitment, what your heart tells you to is faithful and true to your call to discipleship.
For sure. And Father John, I love that you said that prayer is an important part of that. Now, for the parish leaders who are listening, who maybe they've heard about this concept of having a Timonium Tim, but maybe they haven't implemented this in their own parish, what encouragement or first step would you offer them?
Yeah, just as I say, just observe, what is the vibe that your parish gives back to you? Where are they? Are they, like the parish was here, a little bit laxed and, minimalist? Are they people who have had, an introduction and have an enthusiasm about their parish and their faith? So, start with who you have in the pew, as you say. Maybe do a little bit, how did you get there? Especially, it's always really interesting to listen to people's stories of faith. I'm always surprised at the depth of some of these stories that people have. So if you listen to their stories and how they came here and how they came back to the faith or found the faith or always lived the faith faithfully. So that helps you come up with a little bit of a mindset. Probably now I would do a little bit, look into a little bit more demographics of the community. I really haven't done that all that much. I know that, our parish, reflects the demographics of the whole town, the whole community. It's not, our demographics aren't a whole lot, different age-wise and income-wise and things like that than the entire community. So, but just do a little bit, maybe look into some of those demographics and find out a little bit, maybe some of the other, some clues or some characteristics that aren't quite as obvious as you might see looking out at your community on a weekend.
That's such great advice. And the two pieces that I would just want to just hammer home are, one, getting to know the people that are there, hearing their stories, getting to know them. And then two, really paying attention to those demographics and dig in. Look to see what's not obvious too. What great advice, Father John. Well, Father John, thank you so much for joining us again today. We're so grateful that you poured into this community today.
Happy to do it. And God bless the work of Rebuilt and all the parishes that are throughout all the church throughout the world. So it's a fun business.
It really is, and so rewarding. Well, thank you again. And to all of our listeners, thank you. We'll see you next time.